Education. Tonight is our Teaching in a Diverse Society. We're doing EDU 204, which is Culturally Responsive Teaching, and we're having our panel discussion tonight. So we're going to talk about our major topics and objectives. So for this panel discussion, our topic is culturally responsive teaching and learning. And we're going to describe different ways in which teaching can be culturally and linguistically responsive through the learning process and environment. Then we're going to touch on access, equity, and inclusion, specifically identifying strategies to intentionally create that inclusive classroom environment that is culturally responsive, that's going to create a sense of community and belonging for every student. And then we're going to apply different pedagogical practices that provide equitable opportunities to meet the needs of our learners in K through 12. Before we get started with that, though, we're going to, I'm going to let them introduce themselves, our panelists. We have panelists from all of our different service regions, and we're very excited. So, Ms. Aker, I'm going to let you start.
Hi, I'm Kim Aker. This is my 28th year in education. I taught kindergarten and third grade for 25 years here in Wythe County. And then this is my third year as a librarian in Bland, and I was a librarian here in Wythe County for 3 years.
Hi, my name is Lucy Nottingham. I'm in my 29th year of teaching. I've taught first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and I've also been a reading coach.
And I'm Elizabeth Stringer Nunley. I have over 20 years of education, of experience in English learner education, and have taught ESL here in the U.S. and in Spain and Brazil and Germany.
Hello, I'm Susan Tilley, and this is my 33rd year. So yes, that means I should just be moving right on out the door. This is my 33rd year. And I was a middle school teacher and a middle school and high school principal. I'm a secondary person through and through, but now I'm proud to be the superintendent in GALACS.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Williams, and this is my 28th year in education. I was an elementary and middle school teacher, and then an elementary and middle school principal. I'm currently Director of Elementary of Curriculum and Instruction for Smith County Schools, and I love teaching and education. And we're excited to have you join the field because we need lots of great teachers.
Hello, my name is Allison Wright. I'm currently principal at the Jackson Memorial Elementary School in Wythe County, the best of the best. I have served in the classroom in 3rd, 4th, and 5th for about 10 years, and then I went into special education to gain the IEP experience. I was assistant principal in Montgomery County, and I have been in Wythe County as principal for 3 years.
All right. So we're just going to start with our first topic, which is about self-reflection and maintaining objectivity. So in your experience as panelists, what are some challenges that teachers commonly face in keeping your personal opinions and beliefs from influencing your teaching practices?
You're going to make me go first. As far as opinions go, students are going to make comments that you do not agree with, and so it's important to try to separate that from the classroom. Your beliefs are going to impact your teaching practices. It is your experiences that you have had in the classroom, who you have observed. So I think it's important to always remain open, and as long as you're doing what is best for the kids, then you can't go wrong. But you need to be flexible and fluid and consistently changing. Anybody?
I've written out, hey Azalea, I've written out all my answers because I was afraid I'd get up here and just go blank. But I am a Christian, and sometimes it is hard to bite my tongue, but ultimately I feel like my belief system drives my treatment of my students, and I need to show them love, whether it's encouragement, discipline, patience, a hug, no matter the religion or absence thereof, these are common qualities that all humans will find beneficial. So I don't think you can go wrong with those. And I can share my beliefs through my actions and while not ascribing it to my faith.
So, still on that same topic, how can self-reflection positively impact a teacher's ability to connect with their students from different cultural backgrounds? And there might be any specific practices that you might use that might help us.
Okay. Elizabeth will take that.
So self-reflecting is an important part of being an educator, and when I self-reflect, I try to take more of a asset-based approach versus a deficit-based approach, and that's where I'm looking at the strengths of the culture, the race, the gender, rather than the weaknesses and improvements that need to happen. You're going to have that implicit bias, that unconscious bias, whether you want to admit it or recognize it or not, and that's okay, but it's important to step back and see it from a big picture instead of the opposite.
Yeah, and I would just add on that being respectful of all the different types of cultures and backgrounds that students bring into your classrooms. Even if we look the same and speak the same language, we come from so many different experiences and lives lived, and to recognize that everyone has something to offer and everyone knows things and has assets that they can bring into the classroom instead of, like she said, deficits. We all have something to offer. And so finding those things that we can use as strengths in the classroom really show a respect for other cultures and backgrounds and beliefs.
All right, and what advice do you have for our new educators about navigating the situations that might have their personal beliefs that conflict with maybe curriculum or requirements or school policy? What kind of advice can you give, especially to new teachers, kind of like Lucy was talking about, but like as a new teacher, it's very hard and difficult. You have 28 years of experience, you've done that. So what did you do as a new teacher?
Ultimately, you just have to put the child first. You have to see the child, as, a human, not, it's so easy. This is a little bit of a veer off. I've taken several mission trips, and I'd never met a Muslim before I went to Greece, and we were helping with the Syrian refugees coming across into Greece, and Greece was dispersing them out into the European bloc countries, or European countries. And I was scared. I saw them, and I was like, had the stereotype of they probably want to kill me, they probably will hate me, and that was not at all what I found. They were some of the most gracious, most humble, sweet people I've ever met, who've been through far more than I can ever imagine. So I feel like listening is very important. Trying to make sure you're being empathetic or at least sympathetic, even if you haven't been in that position. And I try really hard with my materials. I teach reading, and so I try to select books that show different people groups, different time periods, and expose and learn from those cultures reflected in the text as well. And I would say, ultimately, this is something I think I finally said in my 29th year of teaching. And I told a parent, it's okay, you can think that, and I can think this, and it's okay. I still have respect for you, I still love you, and I love your kid, and it's okay. It's okay if we don't see eye to eye on this. You don't have to believe my way, and I don't have to believe your way. So I feel like there would be a lot more growth and success in our schools if we could do that. If we could, you know what, it's okay.
When I taught third grade, the SOLs change every so often. They revise them and all that. And so when I was still in third grade, at the time we were teaching ancient Greece and Rome, and then they added ancient Mali. Well, first of all, I didn't even know where Mali was. And so I had to do some research and figure it out. And then I learned that basically in Mali, they were all Muslims, which is kind of funny that you mentioned that. And so what I had learned, and my belief system as a Christian, was pretty much totally different from really what they believe in. And I learned that by teaching the curriculum. So my advice would be, stick to the curriculum if you have it. I know some school systems don't even have a social studies book anymore. But what I would say to the children was, well, my understanding is this is what they believe, or my understanding is this is what blah, 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 okay? And then be willing to be wrong, especially if they say, no, this is, and I mean, of course, if you know they're wrong, then of course you contradict them, because they would say, no. I had some that would say, well, them Muslims, they want to kill us. They're all terrorists. And I said, actually, if they're truly a Muslim, they don't want to kill anyone. I said the terrorists were bad people, and this was shortly after 9/11, so you can imagine, and you remember, you all are old enough to know 9/11 and remember everything that was going on in our country. So my advice would be, learn what it is you're going to teach as far as your curriculum, but then stick to the curriculum too. And then you don't have to elaborate if you don't have more knowledge of whatever subject it is you're teaching about.
I think the best advice that I can give is, like she said, understand your curriculum, but also the policies that govern your schools. Because oftentimes as new teachers, we focus solely on curriculum, but it's important that you understand the policies and procedures that are set forth by your division. And then if you read, most places will have in their policy manual a segment on cultural diversity and things of that nature. It's important that you clearly read and understand that. And if you have questions about it, go to your administrator or go to someone that you trust so that they can elaborate that, especially if you're concerned that you may cross a line. As an administrator, I would much prefer a new teacher come to me and just have a discussion to say, I've read this, I'm not quite sure, I have a personal belief that might contradict this. How can I handle that? Because as new teachers, it's great when you ask questions. It's much better to ask a question than to go out on your own and do something and then have a parent call the administration or the school board office and say, what is this teacher teaching? So lots of new teachers are afraid that they're being a bother or that the administrator or someone doesn't have time for them. The truth of the matter is most administrators have open door policies. They want to talk to you about these things. So don't be afraid to ask the questions so that you can have clarity and peace of mind so that you are doing things that align with the school system's beliefs and with the policies rather than beliefs, but then can support your personal beliefs as well.
I think that's awesome advice. I'm very excited to hear you say that. We've talked about how to go to your administrator when you are a new teacher, when you have questions, and it's really important. They're not the enemy, I promise. So we're gonna change gears on the topic just a little bit, and we're gonna talk about culturally and linguistically responsive learning. So, how do you ensure that your teaching practices consider the cultural and linguistic diversity of your students?
First of all, I think it's important that you know your students because if you don't understand their backgrounds, then it's hard for you to meet their needs within the classroom. And a lot of teachers do this with opening exercises on that first week of school, the getting to know you practices, the all about me projects. I have found those to be beneficial at all age levels, from pre-K all the way up through middle school. I don't have the high school experience, but I'm sure it's just as important, if not more, there. It's amazing what we can learn when we involve the families within the projects and when we hear the student's perspective. Because student perspective will give you more information than you can glean from observations, because they will share their beliefs and the things that are important to them. And then when you can recognize that, and let's just say that they're from a different culture than you're aware of, for you to be able to do some research on your own, to be able to meet those students where they are, and to understand what might be offensive or what may be different in their culture. For example, in some cultures, looking you in the eye is disrespectful. And for a lot of us, you know, as a teacher, I need you to look at me when you're talking to me. Please look at me. For some cultures, that may be offensive and a sign of disrespect. And so you may take something as disrespect when in all actuality, they are trying to be as respectful as they can within their own culture. So it's important to research that, get to know your kids, and understand where they're coming from so that you can be inclusive within your classroom practices.
And I'll just piggyback on that. Once you know your students, make sure that you use materials and texts in your classrooms that reflect their different linguistic backgrounds, their cultural backgrounds. Make sure that you have characters in books that represent who they are and all the students in your classes. Also, think about the assumed prior knowledge that is required to understand what you're teaching. We have students from South America or the Middle East who've never seen snow, or I have students who come from Guatemala who've never seen a computer, and you know, in schools now everything is on a computer, and so just understanding what they should understand, and then making sure you can make sure that they know those things. And then also just connecting your content to their lives in some way. If you make it relevant to them and their background, they'll learn it so much easier and have more motivation to learn it if it's relevant to them.
I'll brag on Elizabeth for a minute. Elizabeth's our ELE for the whole school division, and each month she puts out a newsletter, and part of her newsletter teaches us about all the staff about other cultures, and she does such a great, this sounds simple, but I have to share, she does such a great job of, like, as holidays are coming up, she'll explain what those holidays look like in other cultures, and, you know, while we're doing this for Easter, other folks typically do this for Easter, Halloween, Night of the Dead, all these different things. I'll never forget, we did an activity a couple years ago at the school with like an Easter egg hunt, but it wasn't, there were like, if a student found the Easter egg and opened it up, it's like, go give a high five to the principal and thank him for being your principal, or go to the cafeteria line and say thank you. It was like little, you know, be nice to people eggs, right? Well, Elizabeth's students, they didn't know about Easter egg hunts, and they didn't understand that that's how we celebrate Easter. And they had, I think, more fun than anybody else in the school, because that was something new for them that we could simulate right there at the school, when it was just an activity about being kind to one another, but they got to have the, you know, the effect of an Easter egg hunt. So it's important for us, I think, to know, while we're doing Easter this way, they're doing Easter another way.
Great.
I was researching before we came here, and something that was noted several times in the articles I read was, do not alter student expectations unless there's a 504 plan, an IEP, or ESL plan. You don't want to assume they're not smart. They are. I have an ESL student right now, and when he came, he spoke very little English and understood very little English, and it has been amazing how quickly he's caught on. And a lot of it has been self-driven. It has not been from the school. And I also want to brag a little bit on Azalea. She was our ESL teacher last year, and for some reason, my Hispanic students have always been or my Spanish-speaking students have always been very shy, almost like they don't want the other kids to know they can speak Spanish, or they just want to blend in. They just want to, I'm no different than anyone else. But she took her students, and it was the Day of the Dead, and they put on makeup, they put on costumes, and they performed for our entire fourth grade, which was 75 kids. So that was a pretty big audience for I think 5 children. And they were just so proud, and the other kids were so proud of them. And just getting to show what they knew and letting the others see. And I talked to my kids about another language it's amazing to me. I've tried to learn Spanish 3 times now. I failed every time. But I feel like it's important to encourage those kids and to showcase those kids.
So we have talked a lot, going off script a little bit, we've talked a lot in our classes about developing relationships. And so that I loved hearing that. That's key to anything that you're doing, whether it be with a ESL student or any of your students in your classroom. Developing relationships is important. So you've touched on it some, but what strategies do you use to incorporate the students' cultural backgrounds and languages into your learning environment? Is there anything that you specifically do when you have students of different cultures in your classroom? You talked about the Easter eggs and that type of thing, but and the Day of the Dead. Are there other things that you all have tried?
I use a lot of books, a lot of chapter books. Magic Treehouse, I Survived. Those all have. I do not understand. My children have just innate interest in Judaism and the Nazis. And there's a lot of vocabulary with that, like a ghetto. They don't understand what that is, and it really opens their thinking. The book Wonder, we read it, and then there's a follow-up book called Whitebird, it's written from the perspective of Julian, who was the bully in Wonder. He's interviewing his grandmother, who was in France when it separated during World War II, and those kinds of things give my kids a glimpse into something and gives them an appreciation for what they have because of how horrible it was to live during those times, especially if you were Jewish. I have used I Survived books and I Survived the American Revolution. And then there's a Magic Treehouse, Civil War on Sunday, I think. There's lots of books that can connect for the kids. And the American Revolution's written from the perspective, and it shows an African-American slave boy, and the kids, figure out pretty quick that the white boy took the blame because if he didn't, the African-American boy was going to end up getting beat or killed or separated from his family. So I feel like literature books a lot of times gives them a common experience and then something to delve into, to pull apart, to understand. So with my reading, that's what I do. Sorry.
I'm going to piggyback off what she said. I was going to say book choices too. But one of the things is just to ask them, what can I do that would help you? Or how do you all do this? Or how do you do that? I had 2 Japanese students many years ago, and one, her parents were bilingual, and they had been in Japan and came back to America. And the second one came with one of the companies here in town, and she spoke no English. And they came, one of them I had from October until the end of the year. The second one came at the first part of April. And you all will learn that April and May are the hardest months you will teach, except if you're kindergarten in August. But they came right before, the one came right before SOLs. The shocker to me, and I went into panic mode, I was told, yes, she will be taking the SOL test. And I was like, holy cow. So immediately I started looking for resources and things. Well, in Wythe County, we didn't have a lot about Japanese-speaking students. And one of the first things I learned was that there's different forms of Japanese, because my student I'd had a little bit longer, she spoke one form of Japanese, and the new student that came spoke in a different dialect, I guess is the word for it. And so she would try to help me with the second student, and the second student would just shake her head. So luckily, the first set of parents, he agreed to come in and be like an ESL for me and for all of us. And then we were able to get an app on an iPad that would translate things for us. And then her mother was wonderful. And she would take home the textbook, and she would actually translate the entire chapter or whatever we were working on so that she could understand. And I say all of that to just ask them, what can I do to help you, and ask them, like when she needed to go to the bathroom, I had no idea what she was saying. And so we found signs that we could put in different locations, like the water fountain, and at the library door, at the bathroom. And so pretty much our whole school, she had a little brother too, and so everybody in the school was learning a few Japanese words. And so that kind of helped her connect to the other students, because they just thought that was cool, that they were learning to speak Japanese. One way that I found when I was teaching third grade and kindergarten also is by cooking. I love to cook with my kids, especially if I can connect it to a book. And so I remember with this one Japanese student, we were going to make... I think it was peanut butter on celery with raisins, and the story was like 10 ants or something like that. I don't remember. And then we were toasting something for some reason. And half my class, not just the Japanese students, but half my class had never seen a toaster. And so by cooking, I found I could learn a lot about all of my students. Some of them had never been allowed to be in the kitchen. Some of them didn't know what a measuring spoon was. Some of them had never seen a measuring cup. And of course, you can use that for math, your fractions and everything. But just different kinds of foods, and let different children try different things. I know with the Japanese students that came, their parents always packed their lunch for them. And they always had sushi, which I think looks like one of the best things in the world, but I don't eat fish, so I'm just like, But it looked great, and so some of the kids would sit close to her, and they'd be like, ooh, that's gross. And I'm like, no, she likes that, and that's what her family eats. And so they would start talking to her about, and she'd say, well, this is rice. And they're like, oh, I like rice. I'm like, see? It's fish, it's rice, or, and whatever else goes into it. And along with cooking, as far as being diverse, I know we're talking about cultures and races, but we also have all the different, allergies and things like that. So I was cooking in the library, I think it was the beginning of this year, and we were reading Miss Piggle Wiggle, and I call it a book tasting. We bring in food that was in the book. And so I had brought bacon and eggs, was in the book. And I have a student that's from, he's Pakistani descent. And he said, I can't eat that. I never thought about it. I'd had a Muslim student before, and he couldn't eat pork. But it never dawned on me that, this child would not be able to do that. So just be mindful of that, and like our students that are gluten intolerant, the ones that are dairy intolerant, red dyes. I've learned a lot of children can't have those. And then I have one of my grandchildren is diabetic, and she was diagnosed when she was 4. So I'm very mindful of what carbs are in things, how much sugar is in things. But that's another way too, where you can get to know your your children, you know. Some kids I would have never known they were allergic to this or that, you know, except just ask them, you know, and let them say, I can't have this or I can't have that, and don't be insulted by it, but learn from them and talk to them about it.
Okay. So let's talk about creating an inclusive environment. I'm pretty sure that we've been talking about that, so we're going to continue on that. So you've talked about developing relationships. You've talked about different ways that you can come up with fun activities and different things. I loved hearing all of those really great examples. So when you are intentionally trying to create that sense of community and belonging, how as a new teacher, think about back when you were a new teacher, how do you do that? Like creating those, developing those relationships, those type of things. Are there other things that we maybe haven't touched on that some of the other panelists haven't touched on that would help to create that inclusive sense of community? And it could be a sense of community for your classroom or your school.
So I think there are several ways that you can do that. You know, no matter how old a student is, they could be 5, they could be 12. When they walk into a classroom, they want to see themselves represented, whether that be, you know, ethnicity, a disability. I had a student in a wheelchair for several years, so you could represent them through classroom posters. If you're in pre-K kindergarten, the types of dolls that you buy, baby dolls, make sure that they're representative of different races, as well as family situations. You know, I have several children at my elementary school that are being raised by grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings, so just be mindful of that as well. And for that sense of community, we really focus on positive behavior interventions and support. So just making sure that you are recognizing the positive. I know I touched on that earlier, and not nagging, and pick your battles too as well. Make sure you pick your battles. Let students know that they can come to you. Make sure that you are spending time building those relationships. Provide them ways to share their thoughts and feelings, whether that be a Dropbox for comments or just, you know, being comfortable enough with you to approach you. Social emotional learning, that can be integrated in all sorts of ways, whether that be morning meetings, a school-wide system that you're using, zones of regulation, you know, when they first come into the classroom in the morning times, kind of gauging their temperature, because you never know what they're going through at home. So just make sure you're always seeing the whole child. And, you know, school is their safe place. They might not get that anywhere else. So.
And I used to try to make sure that everyone in the class has a role or a job, no matter how big or small. You have a purpose in this room, and you have a function that we can't do without. You're important in here. A couple of the things that I used to do is kind of beginning of year activities to kind of set the tone for the inclusion in the classroom was I would just take a poster board and cut it out as if it were, you know, puzzle pieces, so that I cut it apart. Each kid got a puzzle piece, and they had to draw and write things on it that represented them. Maybe they liked soccer, so there'd be a soccer ball or the flag of their country or their nickname or their pets or whatever they wanted to put on it. And then as an activity, they had to put the puzzle together, and we would keep that posted in our classroom all year to show that we all fit in here and we're not complete without each one of us, and they all have a role. Another thing we would do are like culture quilts, where you just, sheet of paper, and each student makes a quilt square that represents themselves, and then on a bulletin board, put it together in just a big square like a quilt. But it also showcases different cultures and backgrounds and experiences of your students, and also shows that we make one complete class, and without one piece of it, we're not complete.
Great. Okay, so we've kind of talked about that one. Any other specific examples by anybody? We've kind of gone and done a lot of specific examples, so we might go ahead and skip this one, but that you use to make your student feel valued and included. I really loved hearing that each student has a role. They're chosen. They're in that classroom for a reason. So any other interesting things that you might use?
I want to piggyback off what she said to another question.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But as a librarian now, and then when I was in the classroom too, is buying books, and I think maybe Allison said it, but I went to a workshop one time, and there was an Asian author there, and she said, you need to make sure that you have books that look like them. And I hadn't really thought about that, especially Asian children. And there's a lot out now. So when I purchase and buy books now for the library, I do that on purpose, and I share those. When I pick books, I share those. But also, I think somebody else said this, students like in wheelchairs, there's books about that. Students that have ADHD, students that have dyslexia, and you'll be surprised when you start reading that book, somebody will say, oh, I got that too. You know, or that's what's wrong with me, or something like that, you know, and just help them see that they are like other people. You know, even if they have a disability, they have a different way of learning something, skin color, male and female, you know, just all the things. You want to make sure you have books about all those. And I know as a first-year teacher, you're going to try to have a classroom library. You're not going to be able to buy all those books. Books are very expensive. So a piece of advice would be use your library. You know, you can go in as a teacher and you can borrow, you know, 10, 20 books or whatever from your library and have them available for the kids to read, and then turn them in and get some more. You know, you don't have to buy them all at once, but you want them to be available to them, to see themselves in literature. And I think that's one of the best ways is books.
Also, there's a book called Wish. I don't know how many people have read it, but I think it's supposed to be coming out as a movie, but it's a child in the foster system. And I have a group reading that right now, and it just gives a whole another insight into what is going on in this little girl's mind. I cannot emphasize enough to be honest. It's okay to be vulnerable at times with your children. We just finished a unit on poetry. I have never really liked poetry because I'm a very literal person. I'm like, if you're upset, just say I'm upset. Don't say I'm a blue cloud of rain. But so I've been researching, and a lot of stuff that I did not like. When I research it, I can eventually find a way that it's palatable for me, and if I enjoy it, then my kids will enjoy it. So there was a guy in 2020, Brandon Leak, on America's Got Talent, and he actually won it. He won it with spoken word, and that's a form of poetry. So I popped a couple of his poems up, and the first one was about him losing his sister. And we stopped and we reflected, and kids were, you know, and you will not believe how many children have lost parents. I have a child right now whose mom died a couple years ago. I have kids who've lost siblings. To me, it's increased in the past few years. But, yeah, and there's some in jail. This little girl in Wish, her daddy's in jail, Scrappy, for fighting. But, sorry. What was I going? You're good. No, that's okay. But I told the kids, I said, I've had a sister die. So when I watch this, I can see I'm not the only one. This is a productive way to release that. And he looks pretty happy and hopeful. So you can go on. And the next one I showed them was the various ages of a boy growing up. He was 5 and he was inviting his dad to his birthday party, and he was really excited. And then he was 10, and he was a little bit more deflated, asking his dad to come to the birthday party. And we would stop, and I was like, isn't it strange he's asking his daddy to come to his birthday party? Do you have to do that? Some of them do. Some of them got a daddy. We let them discuss that. Then when he's 16, and it did have a bad word in it, and I told the kids, it's going to say HE double hockey sticks, and if you don't want to listen to it, you can go out in the hall. I had 1 out of 65 go out in the hall, and then he was looking through the door the whole time, trying to catch the bad word, I guess. But it was, when he said that word, it was because he was in such a rage at himself, because he actually still cared about his dad, and he didn't want to. His dad had hurt him so badly, and you would not believe how many kids raised their hand and said, I can relate to that. I feel that same way toward my dad or mom, or, my parent chose drugs over me. They'd rather be doing drugs than, and those will be situations and conversations that your children will have with you. And I like to have a classroom that is very open and very safe. We don't laugh at each other. We don't use information somebody gives to hurt them at any point in time. And I feel like when you have a classroom that's safe, emotionally, physically, that it allows children to be themselves and to blossom, and you can address and share some of these heavier things with them. I taught at Laurel Elementary for 20 years, and this year alone we've had 6, not students currently at the school, but 6 students that went through that school die, some of them from suicide. And in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, is there something I could have said? Is there something I could have done? Is there a way that we can, help these kids? So I feel like when you're vulnerable to a point that the kids know Miss Nottingham's not perfect either. And I could ask her this, and she probably would be okay with it. You need safe people. When I taught Jim Crow laws, what do I know about Jim Crow laws? So I had one of my friends who's African American come in, and all of a sudden the kids kind of sit up straighter and they listen closer, because this has impacted her family through generations. Seek out experts. Sorry. I just took us down a big old road nobody won't go on, but.
No, that's a great thing. And I think that you touched on lots of different, I think that many times we just see diversity as skin color, language, things that easily stick out. One of the things that our 6 school systems that we have in this area, the biggest diversity is socioeconomic diversity. So thinking about that as well, are there things socioeconomic wise that you do, this is off script too, that you do to help, bridge that gap, or create that environment where those children also feel like they're loved and they belong in that classroom, even as a school or as a classroom?
It's really, I know it's important to all of us, but we've just made it our mission in Gay-like Schools that we will open doors. We will remove all barriers and open up doors for kids. We're not going to sort and select and decide who can do what and who can't. We're going to open the door, and who's interested, let's go. And so, we kind of joke about it, but we make it our mission to provide everything so that it never even becomes an issue who can and who can't. We provide school supply, a starter set of school supplies for every single child pre-K through 12. You may not need them, however, they will be on your desk when you come to open house. There's going to be a starter set of school supplies for every single child. You want to go buy some cute little sparkly, glitter box from Walmart to add to your supplies, that's fine, but everybody's at least going to have that starter set. The same thing with meals. I know we're probably all CEP school divisions, so everybody's eating for free. You don't have to fill out any forms. You don't have to, say something different when you go through the line. Just come eat, and it's free for everybody, whether you need it or not. Same thing with college. We're doing it with an early college and an early career program. We're not going to let that, we're going to pay for it. You can go to Wytheville Community College. You can spend your whole senior year here getting 19 credit hours paid for by the school division. When I first got to Gay-Likes years ago, you could be in dual enrollment, and we paid for one dual enrollment, but you'd have to pay for all the books. Well, they couldn't. We had students that couldn't afford the books. They wanted to take the class. They're perfectly capable of taking the class. They couldn't afford the textbooks. We're like, oh, no, we're going to provide the textbooks. Elizabeth's going to tell you about Splash. This is something that we do in the summer, and everyone can go, and no questions asked, and everything is covered from, every bit of it is free.
So Splash is our summer enrichment program that we, Ms. Tilley, created using our some ESSER funds, the good COVID money. But what it has allowed us to do is provide experiences in the form of field trips or activities at school that students can participate in to try to eliminate some of the barriers or some of the experiences that some students are able to do that others aren't. We have several students who've never seen the ocean or who've never been to a museum, have never been to a movie theater or a live play in a theater. And so during the summer, we offer all different kinds of experiences, everything from cooking at school to spending 4 days in Virginia Beach and everything in between, New York, DC, for students to be able to go, everything is paid, everything is covered. They don't take a cent unless they want to buy, souvenirs for themselves. But that has been so eye-opening for me. I was able to lead some of those trips last summer. We went out to Barter Theater in Abingdon, and I think I had a group of 20 students, and 15 of them had never been to a live play. We had to talk about how you act in a play and if the actors can hear you because they're used to a screen, they're real, they're right there. So just those kind of experiences, we're trying to eliminate barriers and provide experiences for students to have the prior knowledge that they would need in classrooms to be on a more equal playing field with all.
And we actually did something similar, but it was during the school year, and Mrs. Nunley and I were actually in charge of doing that. But what we started to realize is our students, we are 64%, well, when we had free and reduced lunch, everyone gets lunch for free now, but they did not have the background knowledge going into the standardized testing that are most likely written up north. They had never been in an elevator. They had never seen an apartment building. They had never walked across a crosswalk and seen the different hand signals. So we started taking them on field trips as a school, actually. We went to downtown Roanoke and rode the trolley and walked across the crosswalk. And we went to Draper Mercantile, and they learned restaurant skills and how to order from a menu. So just those real-life applications that they normally would not have. We also have the blessing door, blessing box that we use. It has deodorant, toothbrushes, tissues, any and everything, and we get those items by partnering with our local churches and communities, and they provide us those items for free, and the students can access it anytime they want. They just walk up, they don't need to tell anyone, walk up, get it, and so that they have those things at home.
All right. Yes, and I will talk about that a little bit. My favorite part of that was when we were riding the bus and we had shown the students before we went, okay, you're going to see these things in a city. Okay, we're going to Roanoke. This is a city. And a first grader standing up on the bus screaming, "It's a taxi! It's a taxi!" That was my favorite part. They'd never seen a taxi before. So the next couple questions we're going to kind of flip through because they have already expanded upon how we employ different instructional strategies and materials and what you look for when purchasing books and that type of thing. So we've already kind of talked about those. We've given examples, specific books that are really great for you all to look at and take a look at. So when you're teaching, there's also different ways and learning styles. So how do you adapt not only your teaching methods to that culturally inclusive classroom, but also we have students with special needs populations, we have different preferences to learning. How do you adapt for learning styles and preferences?
Well, I think we have just to go back to the basics. And one of the things that we really try to model and I guess instill in our classrooms and lessons is the multisensory approach. And you've probably heard a lot about that. Some kids learn a lot with visual representations, some with auditory, some with tactile, and some with kinesthetic. It's important for a well-balanced classroom to embed all of those strategies so that students, regardless of your learning style, that will be meeting those needs. And what we find is when we meet the needs through multisensory approaches, then all students benefit, whether it's a student who's a high achiever, a student who might be struggling, a student who might be identified with special education services. We find that our teachers really touch the lives of all those students, and everyone learns more. We also really focus on the practices of explicit instruction, which is the teacher, the I do methods, the we do, and then scaffolded support with the you do model. Oftentimes, as teachers, we try to spend too much time in the I do, but really the majority of your class time needs to be with the we do, with that scaffolded support of working together, modeling for your students, thinking aloud, explaining your processes verbally so that they can see mentally and hear exactly how you approach a problem, whether that be a mathematics problem or whether that be comprehending a story. The methods of explicit instruction, I think, that is just solid foundational educational approaches. There's a book out there by Anita Archer who can tell you more than you want to know, lots of YouTube models and videos on that approach, but that is key. But one thing I do want to say is, and that's found in the Office of Equity and Community Engagement. These are not my words, but this is from the VDOE. It says, education equity is achieved when we eliminate the predictability of student outcomes based on race, gender, zip code, ability, socioeconomic status, or languages spoken at home. And really, I think that sums it up very, very well. Because we do not want to predict a student's success based upon what they look like or where they may come from. Because I grew up in a holler in North Carolina. There were a lot of people who had a lot of judgments about me because I had free lunch back when lunches weren't free. My parents, though, took so much pride that they made sure that I did not get free lunch because they didn't want their children to have free lunches. So they worked extra hard not to take advantage of that. My parents raised us to say, with hard work, with education, and with faith, everything is possible. Now, I know that here we have to maybe put the faith aside, but I have to say in my background, that was key to our success. And it's because teachers and my parents had high expectations for me, regardless of where I came from, regardless of coming from a holler, because we had the foundations of success, of hard work, parents that loved us, parents that said, you need to take advantage of every educational opportunity that you have. A lot of our kids don't have that now, and I am so thankful that I have that background, and many of you probably did too. But we as teachers, we as educators, have to take on that persona and be that parent that pushes kids to their limits and helps them see that the sky is the limit for their success. Because when we believe in their abilities, regardless of their background, they can achieve whatever they put their minds to. And for some of them, they just need to hear that and have that champion in their background, and that champion being a teacher, being a paraprofessional, being a school volunteer, just somebody showing them that success is possible, that they can overcome where they're coming from and the challenges that they may display. So never underestimate the power of your words and the power of believing in kids, regardless of whatever deficits they may have. And again, that goes to that asset mindset, thinking of what they have, what can they bring to the table, because we can build upon that for success in life. And I think everybody up here, that's what we're saying, is that we believe in you, and we believe in you as teachers that you can be that force behind many students to come to be successes.
That's great. That's wonderful. Good job. All right, so I think we're going to skip. Y'all have talked about so many of these. They're wonderful. So let's switch gears just a little, and let's talk about family and community. So Family and community, we've talked a little bit. I know that Ms. Aker talked about how she had the parents come in of her Japanese student, and I think that that's awesome. So we need to touch a little bit more on how do you involve families and communities in the educational process to support student learning and success, and do you have any examples of that?
Whew, we do a lot at Jackson. We have a great PTO and a prior Title I teacher, as well as our new Title I teacher. We do events like Fall Festival, Trunk or Treat, where we partner with the businesses in the community and they hand out candy and can get their business name out there. We have a Building Bridges Day in the fall and the spring where we invite families, parents to come into the classroom and work with their student during a lesson or an activity. We do holiday rotations, so we did some for Christmas, Halloween, and we just did one for something else. Oh, Valentine's Day, yes, woo. And they rotate through the different grade levels. We have parent volunteers to come in for that, and it's just a fun day. We just finished up doing a one book, one school challenge where everyone was reading Mr. Popper's Penguins. And it really encouraged families to get involved at home. We had a little challenge each week where they would submit pictures where they built a reading fort or they acted out a part in the book, and then we would draw for prizes, so that was fun. But I will also say the street goes the other way as well. So as a teacher or as an educator, you have to be involved in the families or in the events that the kids are doing. So going to youth league games or going to dance recitals, you need to try to be visible and build those relationships outside of the school environment. That way, if an issue does pop up, you have that foundation with the family.
And one thing to think about is that family engagement truly should be engagement, not just attendance. I think sometimes it's really easy for us to have events at our school, and if someone comes, then we tick it off. Yes, we've got some family engagement. But we want to make sure that our families are actually engaged in their education, that they have a role, they have a voice, they feel like a true stakeholder in their child's education, and that we're listening and that we're offering assistance, and we're making sure that we get assistance from them, and it's a true partnership. Some of the things that, and I can speak to our Spanish-speaking families because that's who I work with, but we have created some family literacy programs. We've done one at the high school level for college prep. It's for our Spanish-speaking families who have students ready to go to college, and the parents aren't necessarily from here or have had experiences in the U.S. college system, how to fill out an application, what does FAFSA mean, how do I do this, what's the difference in a community college and a four-year university, what's out-of-state tuition, what's in-state tuition, how do I write a personal essay, things like that. And so our families come in, and it's a 6-week program, we feed them every week, and we talk about those things, and they get to learn about how to help their child prepare for college and do all those things in the process. Oh, yeah, so we read a book. It's Graciella's Dream, and it goes right along with what we're saying about make sure your students are represented in your literature, but it's about a student who is a first-generation student. Her family is from Mexico, and she wants to go to college, but she doesn't know how to start. She doesn't know what to ask her family. Her father's not super supportive because he thinks, we're here to work. You need to go to work, and this is good. It was good enough for me. It's good enough for you. And so that it goes through her struggles of convincing her father that education is important, and then how she went through that process. And we have some families in our class who couldn't say, I relate to that, I feel that, I'm not quite sure this is the direction, but we talk through it, and at least they leave our class with knowledge of how to go forward if they wish. We also have one for our elementary families. This is K2, and tomorrow night's our graduation from that program, but the families come in and we model how to read to their children. So we're promoting early literacy at those beginning grades, and so they get, we feed them as well. They get 2 books each class. Again, it's 6 weeks, and they're bilingual books, so all the books are in English and Spanish. So as the kids are learning English in school, the parents can still read the book to them in Spanish, or the child, if they can read in English to their parents. But we read together in the class. We model how to do it. We talk about questions we can ask and how to get their children to think about what they're reading. They work in little groups okay, I can ask this question on this page, and ooh, that's a good idea for that page. And then they go home and they practice, and they read to their kids all week, and then they come back and they report on how it went, and I didn't ask this, or my kid really liked this, or things like that. They're also making a family album, so they're using their own family pictures to write stories, and so they're writing, and then the kids read what they're writing, so it's relevant to them. It's about their own lives. So we do that, and we have a big Hispanic night. You're all invited. It's May 3rd. At school, this is one of our biggest events at school, and it's a soccer game. And then we have a mariachi band, a taco truck, T-shirts. We have some ladies who work in our cafeteria who make the most delicious traditional Mexican desserts, and so they have desserts. We have a parade of nations, and so all of our students are represented by carrying their flag. We have groups of students carry their flag, and we play the national anthem from their country, and they walk across the football field, and everyone is involved and represented, and it's just such a great experience. So, oh yeah, all the announcements are done in Spanish and English, so involve your families.
Just a couple of things practically that you can do. Just don't be afraid to be creative. Some of the ideas I've had have been terrible, and I should not have done them in hindsight. Taking first graders fishing, that's really not a good field trip. So I'd encourage you not to do that. I do feel like in our area there is a lot of Appalachian culture. If you leave this area, you will find others looking down on you when they hear your accent. That's happened to me multiple times, and I don't have a Midwestern accent. I've got a very Appalachian accent. So it's important, I feel like, to instill and help our children to know there's things to be proud of there. We've had things, when I was at Laurel, we did an Old Appalachian Day, and children brought in their parents, their grandparents, and the parents and grandparents presented. We had one whose father was a blacksmith. He set up shop, and the kids could go by. They could ask questions. They could see what he was doing. Had people dancing, teaching the kids how to dance. We had musicians. We had animals. And all of that was fueled by parents, grandparents. I also want to say, my daughter's Chinese, and it's a joke. I mean, we laugh because it's God's sense of humor, because my husband's 6'6", and I'm almost 6 foot, and she's 5 foot. And she's done growing. She's 19. So, but I will never forget going to China. That was the first time I've been on a plane. Also, do not recommend that. Do not get on a plane to China for your first plane trip. That's not smart. But when we got there, we had to do the cultural tours, and we went to the Great Wall of China, and everything there was written in characters. I mean, like, you show me some German, I can probably, figure out a little bit. Anything from the Romance languages, Latin, I can kind of, look at the derivational relations, but I had no basis. And it was almost, and you can call it what you want, but it was almost like I could hear God saying, don't forget this. And when I have those kids in my room that look at a book and they have that same look on their face that I did looking at the sign, it's something to remember. And then we also did a cooking thing. It was kind of crazy. We called it Iron Chef 3rd grade, and we had kids, we involved parents, first of all, by asking them to send in ingredients so they could contribute that way if they couldn't come that day. we had so many wonderful grandmothers come in. And a lot of the kids whose parents didn't come in to cook with them, these little grannies just took them under their wing. It was so sweet. And we made spaghetti, but I did cook the beef before we put it in a crock pot because I wasn't going to chance everybody dying. The kids made sauce. The kids made cheesy garlic biscuits. We made Caesar salad. They made cookies. They learned the difference between a stick of butter being a half cup, half of a stick being a quarter cup, and bad things happen. Well, it was delicious, but they looked terrible to your cookies whenever you use too much. But I feel like those are situations that everybody enjoyed it. And the kids are proud of their parents. They're proud of their grandparents. It doesn't matter if their mom or dad's been in jail. They're proud of them. And when we have opportunities to showcase that and let the kids bring them in and, like you said, engage, not just listen, engage, I feel like that makes a big impact.
Great. Okay, so I feel like we've covered a couple of those. So let's look at challenges. So we're going to move ahead and go to overcoming challenges. So what challenges have you encountered by implementing culturally linguistic and responsive practice, and how have you addressed that? And how do you handle pushback either from students, from parents, from colleagues? So what kind of challenges has that created, and what kind of pushback have you had?
I will say in Carroll County, I do not feel like we have the funding necessary to supply all the ESL teachers and aides that we need. I also I'm a data girl. I like getting my data quick. I want to know where we are so I know where to start and we can take off. They do what's called access testing in Carroll County. Everybody does it, Virginia. I have yet to see the scores of my kids' access testing, and every year, when I finally do get it, and I should have had some already because they do it at the beginning, they don't do it at the beginning of the year, from the prior year. Okay, which is real useful in the classroom, is to get that information in May. So it's very hard to know where your kids are. I don't speak Spanish. I don't know how to gauge where they read. Something else you might want to write down is EPIC. EPIC is a free online program, and it has a lot of Spanish books. I don't know what other languages it has. It also has very broad levels. I have a little boy who has a 51 IQ, and he is reading first through 1.9 grade level books, and we are making progress. But it's nice to have that kind of as a quick go-to. And like when my student came in and knew very little Spanish, they literally just put them in your room and they walk away. And that's, how long have I taught? 29 years. As a 29-year teacher, it still intimidates me. I think, what on earth am I going to do? So that's been one of my frustrations. And I feel like when we do SOL testing, they get an English-Spanish dictionary. It's hard for me to use. So I cannot, a lot of times I don't even, they have to be approved by the state, and the ones that have been approved, I don't find to be very helpful for my students. I'm kind of like, if they can use this, they have a better grip on the English language than I do. I get very frustrated. I wish we had picture dictionaries, and the people will come in and say, put the cards up all over the room in the building, and that's awesome, but I work all day at school, and I usually stay till about 5, and then I go home and I work about 3 more hours, and I haven't got my cards made yet. So those are just some things. I feel like we need to streamline. We need to problem solve. I would love to hear ideas and get, information of how other people deal with that so that you can be efficient in your instruction and not waste their time when they come.
That's one of the challenges or pushbacks. Sometimes I hear, well, it's just more work. I don't have time to do this stuff. I don't have time to create this different lesson for this kid or make sure that this kid has these types of supports or things like that. But it's so important to make sure that all of your students have all of the supports and lesson delivery that they need, and it will actually expedite your teaching because the students will learn quicker and you'll actually get through more material, you'll teach faster, and it'll, once you've created it once, you have it. So, so we're using Strategies. Strategies is a software program that comes with Elevation. Elevation is a English learner student portal, data portal. And so this software program, if you have access to it in your future teaching, is amazing. It's such a lifesaver, but it takes all of your English learner students and plugs them into different lessons and themes, and everything is already differentiated for you. It has all the supports that they need. It will tell you this student needs this level of support, and here is a printout that you can use. Here's a worksheet. It's already created for you. These students are at a higher level, and so here's their supports, and it's done. Like, there's no extra work. So that's one thing that we're providing for our teachers in GALAC. So there's no excuse that it takes too much or it's too much work. It's done for you. A couple other challenges that we find with students is our dropout rate. Sometimes it's very hard to keep students in school who come from cultures where work is valued over education, or if you'll probably run into students who are unaccompanied, which means they don't have parents. They're here on their own. In GALACs, we have quite a few of these students who come to us from countries like Honduras or Guatemala who are on their own. And they are literally couch surfing with a family, or they're paying their own rent. And so they're working after school, they're working at nights. And it's really, really hard to keep those students in school. And so one thing that we've done is we've created a partnership with Virginia Tech to provide, and of course, this could be for any students, but I work with our ESL students, so I'm speaking to that. But so I identified 16 at-risk Hispanic, Spanish-speaking students who are at risk of dropping out. And I connected with Virginia Tech, and through a whole lot of time and planning, we came up with a mentoring program that partners Spanish-speaking Latinx students who are mostly first-generation college students at Virginia Tech with our students at GALACs, not with the purpose necessarily of getting them to go to college at Virginia Tech, but just so that they can see futures beyond GALACs, see futures beyond the jobs that they're doing now, because most of them are already working. Unfortunately, a lot of our students only see certain jobs available to them, construction or restaurants or fruit packing. Those are kind of the jobs available to our students in our area. And so this opportunity has given them an option to see beyond that and hopefully attend college, but really just at least get out of high school because some of these students are slippery. It would be very easy for them to drop out. So we go to Tech once a month, or the mentors come to us, and then every week, they have a Zoom meeting with their mentor. During our flex period, we have a 30-minute period every day where students can get extra help or do enrichment, and so they meet once a week with their mentor. And so far, it's been really successful. None of them have dropped out. We're in March, so we're getting there.
I didn't know someone like me.
Our first trip to Tech, they had not met their mentors. My students didn't really know what to expect. They didn't know what they had signed up for. I just said, you need to do this. They did. We got parent permission and all the things. But we pulled up onto campus, and we're pulling up in front of Burris Hall, and the mentors all had like posters, and it's like, yay, you're here. And some of our students, I had one student said, oh my gosh, look at them, they look like us. And so just the fact that they're on a college campus and their mentors, their students that they're working with are from their same countries and they can speak their same language and they've had the same experiences has been so important and really has met a need that I'm not sure most of us even knew we had, but it's been really great.
Awesome. I love just that part that you said about they look like us. That's just huge. So we are coming now to, it's been wonderful, by the way. We're coming now to kind of the closing. So I would like each of you to we have about 10 minutes, and so if each of you could give us a closing thought, what is your final advice for new teachers about promoting cultural and linguistic responsiveness in your classroom? So, all right, Ms. Wright.
Yes, ma'am. So we've talked about a lot today, but one thing that I will say is love is a universal language, and students will work for people that they like. So Rita Pearson.
Rita Pearson.
So relationships. It doesn't matter the skin color, the cultural background, the disability. Show your babies love and care, support, make them feel empowered, and they will soar beyond your belief.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Every
You're
child
welcome.
deserves a champion. Do y'all remember that one? Okay.
One of my favorites.
I would just like to echo what has already been said. You know, kids, they have a sixth sense. They know if you care about them and if you love them. And they know if you don't like them. There are going to be kids that you encounter that maybe your personalities don't mesh, but find a way to love all kids. Because when you find that connection with them, they will do anything for you. You might not find that so much in middle school, but they are precious in their own way. They won't let you know that they really do like you, but they will still work hard for you. If they know that you care, they will work so much harder than you ever dreamed or imagined. And again, don't ever underestimate the power of your words and encouragement to your students. They want to be loved, accepted, and have a sense of belonging, and hold high expectations for all kids because you really don't know what their limit may be. So don't lower those expectations for our kids because the sky's the limit for many of them.
Another one of my favorite quotes is, no significant learning occurs without a significant relationship, Dr. Comer. And I think that is so true. And I worked with a gal one time, and she said, well, really, Susan, everything comes down to relationships. And I thought, well, gosh, that's an oversimplification. But if you think about it, that relationship is necessary for the learning, and that relationship is necessary to deal with the discipline or the challenges that you're going to face. And those relationships are necessary to get along with the family and be able to, address issues with them as the year comes along. And the relationship is necessary for the high expectations. And if you just keep playing this game, it really can all come down to relationships with your administrator, with your colleagues that you work with your special educators that you're collaborating with your ELE that's helping you. Building relationships really is a fundamental key to this work, because this work is not for the faint of heart. This is not easy. It's the most powerful, amazing thing you will ever do, but it's not for the faint of heart. You've got to be all in, and be willing and able and interested in building those relationships and nurturing them throughout the year.
Ditto. But I would just, don't be afraid, don't be intimidated. Realize that you're not the smartest one in the room, even if you are the teacher. All of our students bring all kinds of experiences, even if they've never seen snow, even if they've never seen a computer, they have life experiences and they know things that you don't know. Tack on to those experiences, learn about them, and create a safe space to make mistakes.
Be brave. Don't be afraid. Take a chance. Network. a lot. I'm always looking to network, and I'm like, oh, now I know somebody who knows the ins and outs of Spanish. So I'm going to get her email address, and I will be emailing her just to, just always look to branch out. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. It's okay. And I make mistakes so often, and my kids will correct me, and a lot of times I'll joke around like, you misspelled this word on the board, and then I'll fix. I'll be like, no, I didn't. It says right there. And then, you just fixed it. But as long as they see you're okay making mistakes, it's okay. They'll respond in like. That's it.
Ditto. That when I've had student teachers in my classroom, just come in and know you're not going to know it all, okay? You're smart, yes. You've been to college, yes. But you don't know it all. None of us do. 28 years, and every day I learn something new. So just be willing to learn, be receptive to other people's ideas, and you can adapt other people's ideas. You don't have to, because the teacher next to you is doing it this way, you don't have to do it that way. But you can take what she or he is doing and adapt it to your kids, and admit when you're wrong. I think that's a big thing for kids. If they know you can make mistakes and, hey, I'm wrong, and let, especially if you've had an issue with a particular student or something that got out of hand, not that that's ever happened with me, but, it's really hard to go in and humble yourself and apologize to a student. But if you apologize to them in front of everybody else and say, I kind of lost my cool and I shouldn't have done that, but let's talk about what led up to that and your disrespect or whatever, be willing to say I'm sorry and be willing to learn.
I'll tell you a real quick story. My first day of teaching, I started teaching when I was 20. I don't know what was wrong with those parents leaving the children with me. I would not have done that in hindsight, but I had student taught in second grade, and that was the end of the year. So they were almost third graders. I started teaching I got the job a week before school started in first grade. And I quickly saw why there wasn't a line out the door for that job, because first grade's hard. And so, they're basically kindergartners. They come in, they all sit down. And just like Miss Marshall had showed me in second grade, I had everything written up on the board. And I was like, okay, just go ahead and read the board and get started. Well, if you've ever been in a first grade class, especially almost 30 years ago, they weren't reading then. And they sat there, and there was this one little brave boy in the back, red-headed James Surratt, raised his hand, and he said, we don't know how to read. And I said, well, what'd you learn in kindergarten? He started naming off the stuff. So I really don't think you can have any rougher start than that. I was just like a clueless wonder. But you'll find those people that you can trust, that you can ask questions to. You're welcome to holler at me, come to my classroom anytime. I'm not going to pay for your therapy after you see what goes on in there, but enjoy it.
Thank y'all so much. We have had just the best discussion today. So let's give them a hand. Thank y'all so much. We appreciate it, and you all have a great evening. Hang out and talk to us for a little bit, okay? I'm going to unhook now, and then thank you all so much. That was awesome.